Chuck, the Witch, and the Brother Switch. Chuck was a ditch digger who had the misfortune of falling in love with a duchess. To fall in love is quite unfortunate enough, but the ditch digger had a greater misfortune of being in love with nobility. She was young, beautiful, and rich. The duchess, to everyone's astonishment, returned his love, but her father wouldn't allow her to marry him. A duchess couldn't marry a ditch digger. It was absurd. This caused the duchess to cry every day. Yes, every single day. Actually, for several hours every day. Her constant weeping echoed throughout the castle, giving her father frequent headaches. In order to appease his daughter and thus ease his aching head, the Duke said she could marry the ditch digger as soon as Chuck acquired a fortune. Of course, the Duke never dreamed in his wildest imaginations that Chuck would become rich. When Chuck heard he had to be rich to marry his one true love, he decided to travel afar where ditch diggers were rumored to be paid a halfpence more for a day's work. You may think that's not enough money to be rich, and you'd be right. You're a lot smarter than Chuck. Before he left, Chuck picked his beloved a bouquet of lilies. Normally, men would try to find roses, but Chuck picked her lilies because with every passing day, he grew to love her a lily more. Chuck traveled until he found work at a baron's estate. He was hired to dig ditches in his fields to make it easier to water the crops. When Chuck walked out to the fields to meet the other two workers, he saw to his dismay that they were his evil brothers, Richard and Robert. Chuck didn't like his brothers. They always got him into trouble, especially since they looked just like him. They were identical triplets. The only person who could ever tell them apart was their mother. But now her eyesight was bad, and not even she could tell them apart. One eye drifted the wrong way, and the other eye had a milky film over it. Chuck got to work anyway. As he and his brothers were digging the trenches, Richard's shovel broke. Since he had no other shovel, he went to the shade and fell asleep. The Baron came out to inspect their work and saw Richard napping. "Why aren't you working?" he asked.
"I can't," Richard whined. "My shovel broke."
"Take your shovel to the witch that lives in the upside-down hut. She'll fix it for you. Do whatever she says, then hurry back, or I won't pay you anything." Richard took his broken shovel and trudged to the witch's upside-down hut. He knocked on the door. An old woman with a long and crooked nose answered it. Richard could see several white kittens roaming around inside.
"Yes?"
she croaked.
"I need you to fix my shovel," Richard demanded.
"Do you have any money to pay me?"
"No."
"Then take this bag and go to my field of potatoes. Fill my bag with potatoes, and I shall fix your shovel so that it will never break again."
Richard reluctantly took the bag and went to the field. He started picking potatoes, but soon grew bored of it. So instead, he filled the bottom of the bag with rocks and dirt and put the potatoes on top. When the witch looked in the bag, she saw the potatoes and thought it was filled. She handed Richard his new and improved shovel. Only after he left did she realize what he had done. The next day, as Chuck was working hard and his two brothers were working not quite as hard, Robert's shovel broke. He wandered to the shade and took a nap. When the Baron came to inspect the work, he found Robert sleeping and scolded him. He told Robert to go to the witch so she could fix his shovel. When Robert arrived at the witch's upside-down hut, the witch squinted her eyes at him. She thought he was the same person as before because she didn't know Richard and Robert were brothers. He told her he needed his shovel fixed, but he didn't have any money.
How did your shovel break again?
Asked the witch.
That's impossible. Am I losing my touch?
Robert didn't know what she was talking about, but he didn't care to ask. He ignored the question because talking to old people was extremely tedious for him.
Can you fix it or not? I have to get back to work, you weird cat lady.
I'll give him another chance. Maybe this time he will do the work,
the witch thought. The witch handed him the bag and instructed him to fill the bag with potatoes, like she told Richard. Sadly, Robert was just as lazy as Richard. He filled the bag with rocks and dirt and only put potatoes on the top. The witch gave him his shovel, promising it would never break again. Only after he left did she realize that she had once again been tricked. Near the end of the day, Chuck also broke his shovel. He immediately went to the witch's upside-down hut like his brothers had done. The witch opened the door and thought she was seeing the same person as before. She couldn't believe that not only was the shovel broken again, but that he had the nerve to come to her a third time after he had tricked her twice.
How did you break your shovel again? Why isn't the spell working? You must be doing something wrong.
Chuck didn't understand, but he didn't mind speaking to old people because, unlike his awful brothers, he was kind. After talking to the witch, he realized her confusion. He explained that his brothers were the ones who had been rude to her. In order to make amends, Chuck filled up 3 bags of potatoes and gave them to the witch. The witch, in return, handed him his shovel, promising it would never break again. Chuck thanked her, petted some of her white kittens, and happily returned to the Baron's field. On the last day of work, Chuck showed up to work early in the morning and started shoveling. Richard and Robert showed up a while later and began to work too. As they worked, their shovels clanked into something hard. Chuck leaned down to investigate. It was gold. Richard and Robert were excited. They were going to be rich. Chuck told them no, they wouldn't be rich. This was the Baron's gold because they found it in his field. Richard and Robert argued that they should take as much as they could and run away, but Chuck insisted that they should tell the Baron.
Fine, said Richard. You go and find the Baron. We'll wait right here and guard the gold.
Since you're smarter than Chuck, you could probably guess that the evil brothers planned to run off with the gold as soon as Chuck left. As for Chuck, he wasn't the smartest man in the world, but he also wasn't a complete fool. Even Chuck knew he had to stay with the gold to make sure his evil brothers didn't steal it. He would just have to wait until the Baron came to inspect their work at the end of the day. Unfortunately, when Chuck wasn't looking, Robert hit him with his shovel, knocking him to the ground. Richard took out a vial of poison, which he always carried with him for some strange reason, and prepared to pour it down Chuck's throat when all of a sudden, poof! The poison vial shattered on the ground as Richard was turned into a fluffy white kitten. Robert howled with laughter. Chuck tried to pick up the kitten, but it climbed a tree and hissed. As Chuck was distracted, Robert hit Chuck over the head with a shovel again, knocking him out. He quickly filled 3 bags with gold and ran off. Chuck woke up and saw that the gold was missing. However, he did manage to catch the white kitten. He went to the Baron and told him everything that had happened. He promised to track down his evil brothers and get the gold back, but first Chuck had to talk to the witch. He had to find the meaning of the white kittens, so he returned to the upside-down hut and asked her.
"Why did you bring me this fluffy kitten?"
croaked the witch.
"Don't you recognize your own brother?"
My brother? What do you mean?
"I didn't reveal the price tricksters must pay.
She explained.
When someone betrays me, I place a curse on them. They have 2 days to correct their mistake. I'm a good witch after all. In 2 days, if they don't apologize to me and make amends, they transform into white kittens."
My brother is now a kitten?
"Don't worry, it will only last a month. Then they transform back."
Are all these kittens in your home people who have transformed?
Most of them are. I take care of them if no one wants them. I will not be responsible for a herd of kittens roaming wild in the kingdom, especially kittens that lack the necessary common sense needed to survive.
Chuck asked the witch to take care of Richard the kitten while he went to find his other evil brother. The witch agreed, and Chuck left the kingdom searching for Robert. Fortunately, he was easy to find. Robert was enjoying a scrumptious dinner at an inn when Chuck walked into the dining hall.
Well, brother, it seems you found me,
said Robert.
How did you manage to track me? I went to the most expensive inns in all the town and asked if anyone had seen me before. You shouldn't have gone through that much trouble. It wasn't much trouble at all. It took me 1 day to find you. No, brother, that's not the trouble I'm referring to.
Robert stood and gripped his dinner knife.
You'll have to fight me to get the gold. I don't have to fight you, said Chuck. I only need to wait. To wait? For too long I have waited for this moment. My hatred for you has been growing ever since I met you. That's right, brother, since our birth. I will not restrain my fury any longer. Hatred runs hot in my veins. I will let the hatred overflow and poof!
The knife clanked to the floor. Robert was nowhere to be seen. In his place stood a stunned white kitten. Chuck grabbed the kitten and returned to the witch. After he added another cat to her herd, he restored all the gold to the Baron. The Baron was so happy, he decided to give one of the bags to Chuck as a reward. Now, Chuck was rich. Chuck joyously returned to his Duchess and asked for her hand in marriage. The Duke still didn't want his daughter to marry a ditch digger, but there was almost nothing he could do about it. After only a months-long engagement, the day of Chuck's wedding arrived. Everything appeared to follow the Duke's plan. Chuck and the Duchess said their vows and they were married. Chuck lifted the bride's veil for the kiss, but it wasn't the Duchess at all. It was her maid. The Duke had locked his daughter in her room and replaced her with her maid. At that moment, the Duchess ran into the church and yelled,
"Stop the wedding! Stop the wedding! That's not me!"
But she was too late. Chuck and the maid were already married. The Duke was happy his plan had worked, and the maid was happy she was married to a wealthy man. Suddenly, a man ran into the church shouting, "Stop the wedding! That's not me!" The Duke turned to see who it was and froze in shock. It was Chuck. Chuck the intruder pointed at the groom and said, "This is my evil brother Richard. He knocked me out and took my place as the groom." Chuck the groom said, "That's a lie. He is my brother Richard.
He has come to sabotage my wedding."
The doors burst open again.
"Stop the wedding! We've been switched!"
The second intruder was also Chuck.
"Don't listen to either of them. I am Chuck. These men are my evil brothers, Richard and Robert."
No one could tell any of the three brothers apart, but the Duchess knew what to do. She asked Chuck the groom what flowers he had given her before he left to seek his fortune.
"Red roses," answered the groom.
No,
"Pink roses."
you only get one guess.
Scolded the Duchess. The Duchess asked the first intruder what flowers he had given her.
"Pink roses."
No,
"Yellow roses."
no,
"Why does he get 2 guesses?"
Whined the imposter groom. The Duchess said,
it wasn't yellow.
"White roses," the first intruder yelled. "Orange, purple."
No, stop. It wasn't roses. Stop guessing.
the Duchess yelled in exasperation. She turned to the second intruder and asked him the same question.
"Lilies,"
The real Chuck answered.
"because with each passing day, I grow to love you a lily more."
Since the bride and the groom had both been switched, the real Chuck and the real Duchess could marry. The Duke, Richard, and Robert were thrown in prison. Chuck and the Duchess lived a happy life together. The Duchess didn't mind that she had married a ditch digger. Chuck would always pick her flowers, sometimes lilies, but often he would pick daisies, because he promised to love his wife each and every daisy. The end.